Hi, I'm Trey, the host of the Bitcoin is Dead podcast, a show where we talk to our local politicians, our local community, and our neighbors to find out what they know about Bitcoin and try to help them see what we see about Bitcoin today. We also hope to answer a few questions for everyone else along the way, play a couple stupid games, and generally have a good time. You can find out more about us on Twitter at BTCisDeadPod, or you can reach out to us via email at Trey, Trey, at happymining.io. Thank you for giving us a shot, and we hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Bitcoin is Dead podcast. I am here with a special guest today, and I'd like to start off with my own little introduction of this particular guy. We've been rolling together now for 20-ish years. 2014, almost, yeah. Right?
No. 2005.
Yeah, you're right. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2012. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it was
we're a year shy of 20 years.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, I see you as a person in my life who taught me a substantial amount. I mean, when I showed up to boot camp, I learned a lot, but it wasn't until after boot camp and 2 years into the Marine Corps when I met you that I started asking questions that weren't about beer or something, or that doesn't really matter. And you were the first person I ever approached with questions like that. I remember I was really nervous about approaching you to ask about your religion because I had never really talked to anybody that wasn't of my religion. And even when I did, it generally wasn't about my religion. Like there might be commentary about the religion, on a given day, but there was no in-depth conversation. But you've taught me a lot. And although I can't say that I've always agreed with everything that you've said, you never really wavered in your belief. You were always open to having a conversation about things. But you had already reached a point by the time I met you that a lot of your beliefs were set. And not because you couldn't learn new things, but because the things you had learned told you that there are certain things that are like an ultimate truth. And there's nothing new to be learned there. Like, this is just like gravity is a thing. What goes up will come down type of deal.
I remember that argument.
Yeah. Bad example.
Yeah.
Bad example. That was a drunk night. But I wanted to bring you on here for a couple of reasons. One is I think that in the long term, you're actually more of a Bitcoiner than you know. But in the short term, I think that there's still a lot for me to learn, and there's a lot for people that might be listening to learn. So I wanted to work with you to get you on here to let you start from the beginning and tell your story. Because not only me, but many people we've known have run against you on a given topic. And it's not always that you win, it's that you don't lose, if that makes sense. Where you might not convince the other person to change their mind, but it's very uncommon for someone to find to poke a hole logically in your belief systems based on at least the evidence that I've ever been presented in these conversations. Yeah. So I think it'll be cool to do, and it's something we can do more than once. So as today, if you enjoy it, down the road we can do more things where we maybe dive into a particular topic or whatever the relevant news is for the day, whatever it might be. But that all said, Thomas Doyle, gunsmith, brother, son, friend, philosopher. I don't know all the titles that you might hold, but welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So where does it start? How do you tell if today's your last day and you got to write the book of Doyle? Where does it start?
So originally I was born and raised in California, in Los Angeles. I come from a fairly conservative Catholic family. My father is of Irish descent. My mother is of Mexican descent. So it should surprise the background should surprise nobody once they know that. But as a kid growing up, one of the greatest things I think my dad ever did for me was I asked him about a dog. And I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old at the time. And he didn't know about whatever obscure breed of dog I was asking about. And so he just looked at me and then turned around behind him. We had a bookcase right behind him where he was sitting. He was sitting at the table reading his newspaper and pointed at the bookcase. There was a set of encyclopedias sitting right there. And I'd seen them before. I knew they were there. It just never occurred to me as a little kid to try and make use of them. And he just pointed them out and said, the encyclopedias are right there. If you really want to know about that thing, this dog, you know alphabetically how things line up alphabetically and stuff. Just look through those encyclopedias alphabetically and you'll probably find it, and you can find all kinds of information about it. And so with some trepidation, I went up there and found the right encyclopedia and pulled the encyclopedia down and opened it up and looked up this dog. And to this day, I don't remember what the dog was. I just remember it was some kind of a dog. But yeah, as I was reading about the dog, on the opposite page, there was a diagram of something. And it showed like a whole bunch of arrows and lines and stuff, like arrows pointing, going through lines and stuff like that. And I was like, what's this? As I finished reading about the dog, I looked at this diagram that laid out clearly a series of events occurring. And I started reading about it. And to this day, I don't remember which one it was, but it was either the Battle of Gettysburg, the Battle of Waterloo, or the Battle of Stalingrad. And I don't remember which one I read about first, which one I found, which was opposite the dog. But I remember reading that and that this is an illustration of a battle that took place, and that tens of thousands of men clashed and were killed on this battlefield. And this is a diagram of what happened. And I was just kind of blown away by that. So I immediately read everything I could read about that, and then started looking for, as a little kid, I was just looking for other diagrams that were similar, that I could actually follow along and understand what was happening. And the first three that I found were Gettysburg, Waterloo, and Stalingrad. And I don't remember which one was first, which was second, which was third anymore. But those were the first three that I found. And from there, I started reading up on the history of the Civil War, the Napoleonic War, and World War II. And from there, that got me into reading about world history. So I got to a point where I was just randomly, when I had free time, pulling down encyclopedias and just reading up on world history, just because I thought it was fascinating.
What was free time like? Like, was this something you did daily, weekly?
There was pretty much every day I would have at least a few minutes. As kids, we always had chores and stuff like that we had to do, but there would almost always be, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here. You finish all your schoolwork before dinner. You generally have some free time. You finish all your chores after dinner. There was generally some free time before bedtime. So it was almost every day I'd be reading about something.
Were your brothers and your sister doing the same thing?
No.
What were they doing? What did they spend their free time on during this kind of time period?
Well, Gerard and Philip would go out and get in trouble. And then Angela, I don't know what she was doing. She's the oldest, my older sister. She's my only sister. She was always kind of removed from the rest of us because she was the oldest and because she was the only girl. She definitely got into a lot less trouble than all the rest of us. But yeah, she always had like schoolwork to do because she was always at least a couple of grades ahead of anybody and all the rest of us because she was the oldest. So she was always very much removed from all of us. And then obviously she went off to go to work and all that when she turned 18. So she was always kind of separate from us. Gerard and Philip, that's the brother below me and the brother above me. I have one older brother. They would go off and go exploring. They would go climbing walls and climbing trees, and sometimes I'd go with them. But for the most part, I was kind of the killjoy of the group. I was the one being like, "This is a bad idea. We're going to get in trouble. This is not a good thing to do. We shouldn't be going through the neighbor's yard. We shouldn't be climbing this tree. We shouldn't be running through that person's back porch. We shouldn't be doing all this."
How old were you?
Like between 7 and 15. These are the sort of things we would do as young boys.
At 15, you were still reading encyclopedias, though?
Oh yeah, I kept doing that right up until I went to the Marine Corps.
Do you still read encyclopedias?
So now it's mostly electronic online. I'll Google stuff online.
Yeah, but you don't actually hit an encyclopedia even digitally now. You just do like Wikipedia.
So I will read Wikipedia quite a bit. I will caveat that for anybody listening. Wikipedia is a great place to find sources of information. Wikipedia itself is not a good source of information. It's a great place to find sources. But yeah, so you don't want to. Wikipedia is a little too easily edited and accessed by anybody on the internet. So you don't want to rely on it too much. But it is a great place to find sources. And the way I figured that out was just Googling Marine Corps stuff. And the sources that are cited at the bottom of the article are the Marine Corps publications. So you could use the Wikipedia article to find the actual Marine Corps doctrine very quickly.
What was your family life like?
It was definitely a lot more reserved than most people's. Like, we didn't have a TV growing up. We had a monitor that was hooked up to a VCR, and so we could watch movies, and sometimes we would get TV shows on VHS and stuff like that. I think the first movie we ever watched in color, because the original monitor we had was black and white, and the first movie we ever watched in color was Beauty and the Beast. And we had seen it in black and white, so seeing it in color, I remember that was a big deal.
Does that movie still hold something for you because of that?
I do still like it.
Even though like it's kind of a girl movie?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not your typical.
As little kids, we watched all the Disney cartoons, all the Disney Renaissance movies, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, of course. The Emperor's New Groove. I remember that was when that one came out. That was kind of later than most of those other ones, but that one was always one of my favorites. I quoted that movie for years, and every once in a while I still quote it from time to time. Yeah.
But what were your parents like?
So as long as I've known them, they're very sensible and responsible and reasonable people, salt of the earth kind of people. But I think most people would think of them as kind of boring, which is kind of funny because growing up as a kid, I always heard stories that my dad had a 68 Chevelle when he was young, when he was in his early 20s. And for years, I had no idea what that was. And I thought of it as some kind of small, sensible, economical car. And I'd always heard how my dad did racing and stuff like that. And I never understood that. That never made sense to me, how he could have been racing in this, this sensible, economical car, because that's always what he drove. And then one day I was actually in Miramar. I'd already joined the Marine Corps. I'd already been in for a couple of years. I was in Miramar, and I saw one of the Car Trader magazines or something sitting there by the cash register. I was walking to the cash register, and I think the one that was on the magazine was a 69 Chevelle. But for anyone who doesn't know, that's a fairly powerful muscle car. And yeah, it's not sensible or economical at all. It is very much a powerful racing car, muscle car from the 60s. And yeah, I almost tripped over my own feet. I couldn't believe it. So then I started asking questions of other people in the family who were older, who were around in that time, and found out that apparently back in the day, my dad was actually a somebody in the street racing community in Los Angeles. He was a known person. People knew Patty Doyle because they would go. His name is Patrick Doyle.
Yeah, Patty. That just I couldn't imagine calling your dad Patty.
Yeah. It was crazy. It blew my mind when I found that out. But yeah, apparently at the time him and my mom were dating, he was a freaking street racer.
Yeah.
He was like Fast and Furious kind of shit. He did that for real.
But so your mom would have been around during that time period too?
Yeah. So they met as kids. Their families lived across the street from each other, and their mothers, my grandmothers, were friends, and that was how they met.
So she knew him from early on.
Yeah, they knew each other as kids growing up.
Yeah, so she knew him before he got into whatever wildness he got into, and then after.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. She knew the whole thing, and yeah, they came together and decided to settle down and have a family.
Now you do have a big family.
Yes. Yeah, I have one sister and 7 brothers.
Was that intentional?
Yes. They went into it. My mom and dad, their intention when they got married is we are going to build a big family.
How did they know? And I'm imagining it was just biological, but did they pick a stopping point, or did it just nature took its course?
They said we're going to have as many children as God will bless us with.
Okay. So they could have had 12, 15 if the time if time and biology had allowed.
Yes.
They could have had as many as they could.
Yes.
I'm planning a trip, obviously, to Japan.
Yeah.
And it's 5 of us. Yeah. And that is a hefty load, right? Financially.
Yeah.
Did your parents take you guys or do a lot outside of the home? And if they didn't, do you think it was financially related?
We did stuff occasionally. I remember as a kid going to SeaWorld, Knott's Berry Farm, which is like a amusement park type thing that's up there in Los Angeles. We went to Disneyland a few times. So we would occasionally go places and do things. So yeah, it was not a common occurrence. That was like a once a year kind of thing.
How did you get there with 12 people?
My parents had a big ass van.
Did you have a 15 passenger?
15 passenger van, yeah, big one.
Was it white?
Yes. Well, first we had a tan van, and then we ended up getting the 15-passenger one later.
Was that so? Did you guys have 3 vehicles, or was it? Because I imagine you guys didn't drive the 15-passenger van every day.
No, that got driven around all the time.
Yeah,
that was my mom's standard riding vehicle.
So your mom would just take out to the grocery store by herself in a 15-passenger van.
There was almost always somebody with her.
Okay.
So yeah, and especially going to the grocery store, this is something that a lot of people don't realize nowadays. When you have a lot of kids like that, the way to make it so much easier on yourself is to have the kids start doing things.
Yeah.
And they start taking a lot of the stress and the burden off of, normal upkeep of the family. For example, when mom would go shopping, she would always make sure she had a couple of us with her to push the carts and haul the groceries and move all the stuff. Because obviously you need a lot of groceries to feed that many people.
How many gallons of milk per week?
At least 6. No, because she would make a separate milk run on Saturdays. So probably around 8.
Yeah. She had a milk run day.
Yes. Yeah, that was a thing.
If you had been born a few years prior, you would have made the milkman like at a lot of money.
Yes.
Because he'd been stopping by there like every other day.
Yes. Well, if we had been born in that era, we probably would have got a cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not in Los Angeles.
Yeah, not within city limits. Yeah. Because the city of Los Angeles has all kinds of
I don't know when
regulations
milkmen stopped. I don't know when that became a not thing anymore.
I think it was in the 50s.
Yeah. So
I think it was. I could be wrong, but
was already Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I've always understood your upbringing in the way that we've messed with each other over the years. I've always understood your upbringing is not. I wouldn't say strict. That's not the right word for it. That's not how I feel about it. I would say.
By modern standards, strict would be a good word.
Yeah, I think it is a good word, but it doesn't describe how I've always viewed it, which is like internal. It was a family that had a certain system, a certain set of rules that they maintained, and the family was a tight knit internal unit. Yeah. Where I understand that you had extended family, cousins, and other things, but within the children of your parents. There always seemed to me to be a cohesion and a tight-knit kind of mentality where what went on outside the family was one thing, what went on inside the family was another. And inside the family, the rules were structured as such that, again, I don't feel that it was per se strict. It was just that you knew what the rules were. Yeah. And so they were easy to abide by. Like, if you did something dumb, you knew what was going to happen.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't a question.
Yes.
There wasn't like a conversation that was had between parents of other families, like, what do you think I should do, or what would you do? Like,
you knew what the rules were, and my parents believe in spanking, so yeah, we all got spanked. That's how it worked.
But Angela is the oldest.
Yes.
Is she older? Is she old enough beyond you guys that she didn't get spankings by the time you were getting spankings? Like, was there a big enough gap between you guys?
So this is one thing I think was just a difference between boys and girls. Angela caused way, way less trouble. I know she did get spanked a few times, but it's like our entire childhood, she got spanked maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Whereas the rest of us, we'd get spanked 2 or 3 times a month.
I feel like your dad was whipping somebody's ass every single day of the week. Like, he come home from work and his hands just warmed up. He's been rubbing his pants on the way there.
That's amateur hour. That's amateur hour. So, yeah.
Your mom already had the drawer open with the spoons hanging out when he got home.
You're still in amateur hour there, buddy.
Okay, where are we going? Are you saying that your dad was whipping people with extension cables?
So it went from hands and then to like plastic wiffle bat and then to the freaking spoons.
Wiffle bat? Wiffle, like
that was a joke.
No, it just seems
that broke almost immediately and it was utterly useless.
I grew up with a lot of grandmas who'd throw a slipper.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes they didn't even use their hands, right? It was just like a foot movement suddenly and like a slipper would go across the room.
Yeah.
But it seems like a wiffle bat is such a random choice. Like, your dad was just mad one day and there was a wiffle bat nearby. It could have been a tomahawk steak and he would have grabbed it and beat you.
He deliberately, that was when we were all little, so he deliberately grabbed something that wouldn't hurt us.
Yeah.
And then as we started getting bigger, it didn't hurt us, so it had no effect.
Yeah.
And he eventually broke it and it just had no effect. So we had to go to something bigger. And that's when the spoons came in. Then we got a little bit bigger and those stopped having an effect. So then he went up to belt.
How big do you got to be for a big ass wooden spoon not to have an effect? Because I imagine that hurts thoroughly.
No, not really. Once you do something really stupid, like freaking, I'm trying to think of something like just dump half a roll of toilet paper in the toilet, the 6th time you've been told to flush every piece of toilet paper you put in there, and you just ignore it and put that in, so you overflow the toilet and there's now poop water on the floor. You need something to tell you, hey, don't do that. And obviously just telling you doesn't sink in. It doesn't leave an impression.
Was that
so every single one of us has done that at least 2 or 3 times. Okay. This is an ongoing battle this is one of many ongoing battles that my parents fought and eventually won. Like, none of us has clogged a toilet in years. And we've learned, if you clog the toilet, fix it. That's another thing that we learned. Don't put it on mom and pop to fix it. You fix it. If you fix the problem before they get there, then there's no problem. You just explain, oh, hey, I fixed this thing. And they're like, oh, okay. When you leave a giant mess of shit on the floor for mom and pop to clean up, they get a little upset. And this is part of the trick of raising kids. You get them to start cleaning up their own messes, and it makes a whole lot less heartache and pain for mom and pop.
Yeah, but I could share a story about you clogging up a toilet.
Yeah.
Right?
What's that?
You don't remember? It was cold, and you clogged up the damn toilet, and I was up under the house trying to clean it, and we had that plumber guy show up.
I do remember that. Yeah. There was nothing I could have done about that. That wasn't the toilet itself. That was the plumbing under the house.
Yes, I know. It just happened to be. You just happened to be the one who discovered it.
Yes, yeah. It was. There was absolutely nothing I could have done about that.
Yeah, that wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
But so you grew up Catholic.
Yes.
I grew up Protestant.
Yeah.
And Protestant might be even like a light term because it was. I don't think most of the people in my church could have told you what a Protestant was. They knew they were Baptist. Yeah. That's all they knew, right? It was the King James Bible from front to back, and that was the end of the story. There's no more conversation.
Yeah.
Catholics, whoever else, like, it doesn't matter. It's not even a conversation.
Yeah.
It's dead on arrival.
Yeah.
So growing up Catholic, I've learned from you over the years was much different.
Yeah.
I also feel like that's something that you've also had to defend for a lot of your life. I don't know about it during your childhood, but I know that after you grew up and joined the Marine Corps, our time together there, everyone assaulted your religion.
Yes.
At some point to some degree.
Yes.
Even if it was just through something you wouldn't do, like you wouldn't eat breakfast before you went to church.
Yes.
And like when Lent came around.
How long did it take you to realize that?
Years. Years. And I was blown away when I found out. I'd known you it was after the Marine Corps when I found that out. Yeah. So that I had known you for 10 years.
Yeah.
You're a sneaky thing.
Yeah.
The whole leaving my house on a Sunday morning, I thought you were getting a haircut.
I mean, I did get a haircut after church. Yeah. Yeah.
But tell me about like how you perceive your upbringing from a Catholic perspective, and then what it felt like when you walked out from your family and joined the Marine Corps and started interacting with people that weren't of the Catholic faith en masse. I know that you had plenty of people you interacted with before, but when you were the lone Catholic or the lone outspoken Catholic, in a lot of the circles that we found ourselves in, how did that work out for you?
So, as a Catholic among Catholics, occasionally you'll find somebody who believes something kind of weird, and it doesn't really make sense most of the time.
Like what?
The circumcision thing. A lot of people think that Catholics have to be circumcised, which is very, very strange to me, because if you've actually read the Bible, you know that in the Acts of the Apostles, Peter and Paul had that debate like 2,000 years ago. And in the Bible, the way the debate ends is Jesus gives a vision to Peter, because Jesus has already been crucified, already risen from the dead. He's already ascended to heaven. So he's gone. And Peter was like the leader of the apostles. And then Jesus picked Paul to kind of help with the evangelization and spreading of the gospel. And they're having this debate between them. Peter believes that everybody who joins the new Christian faith has to be circumcised and has to become a Jew, basically. And Paul is disputing that, because Paul's preaching to the Gentiles, the Greeks and the Romans and such. And they're having this big debate. And there was a big council in Jerusalem where they all came together, trying to decide what they were going to do about it. And basically, Jesus gave Peter a vision, and it's essentially told Peter, "Shut the hell up. Paul's doing what I want him to."
Let me stop you right there. There was a debate, in antiquity, about chopping off tips of dicks.
Yes,
like a full debate. Like they organized, got people together, and talked about tips of dicks.
Yeah, well, the foreskin of the dick.
Like you have too much cock.
Yes,
you need to cut some off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the event that we are now, like, that's how circumcision was defined for the Catholic religion, was a organized cock cutting conversation.
Yes.
Say that 3 times fast.
No.
I don't mean to joke, but like you gotta,
Yeah.
you like imagine being a bystander and being like, well, what's that meeting about? And they're like, well, they're talking about cutting off the tips of each other's dick. They're really having a debate about it. Serious.
Yeah.
That seems strange.
It does seem strange today because we don't understand the severity and importance of cultural imperatives that existed at the time. And that was a really big one for Jews and remains a really big one to this very day. Male Jews are all circumcised. You know, if they're religious Jews. If they're just cultural Jews, they might forego that. But if they're a religious Jew and they actually believe in the Jewish faith and follow the Jewish tradition to any extent, a male Jew is circumcised.
But from the Catholic perspective, not required.
Not required.
Frowned upon?
Well, there's no real reason for it. Like the only actual function of it is it makes hygiene simpler, but you know, proper modern bathing takes care of that problem. But yeah, that's something that Catholics are still oddly split on, and I don't like every time I encounter a Catholic who believes that, yeah, you got to be circumcised, I'm like, what? And
it's not part of the Catholic. There's nothing in the Catholic teachings that says you should be, outside of, like, the Bible is one section of teachings, but
all Catholic teaching is based on the Bible, and the Bible very explicitly says, no, you don't have to. It's not required.
What? So you grew up,
yeah,
Catholic house,
yeah, but then I go
ran
into
into some
Marine Corps.
weird Catholic folk.
Yes, but usually it's one specific thing like that, and that'll be it. The rest of their beliefs make perfect sense, and I understand where all the rest of their beliefs come from. Then I get out into the world and start meeting non-Catholics, and I was shocked by how often their beliefs are based on nothing. And this is one reason why I had no trouble constantly getting pushback from people, because I would start questioning them on their beliefs and their doubts, and why do they doubt this or that particular thing, and why do they believe in this or that particular thing. And I found that oftentimes people's beliefs are based on almost nothing, or maybe they're just based on, oh, my dad said so, and they never even thought to try and check on that or investigate it a little bit.
But the sheer quantity of people that I know, at least, that have had conversations with you about not necessarily being Catholic, but about being religion. Yeah. Did you ever question yours? Did you ever waver because of conversations or quantity of conversations?
No. Nobody has ever presented me an argument that made me think, maybe the church teachings are wrong. I've never heard an argument like that. Now, it's important because part of my upbringing was being educated on the history of the church and the history of the world and such. And so I'm very much aware that the Catholic Church is a human institution. Now, as a Catholic, I believe that God is guiding this institution and will prevent it from going too far astray, and will prevent it from, for example, teaching heresy. But that doesn't mean the people in the church are incapable of sin.
Yeah.
They're still people.
They're still human.
Yes.
Does that include the Pope?
Yes. Now, I don't think the Pope is capable of teaching. Like a bishop could try and go teach heresy and become a heretic bishop. I don't think that's possible for the Pope. I believe that, like, if he were to try to consciously, deliberately try, God would literally strike him dead. So he'd die of a heart attack or a stroke or something.
You believe that if he came out and said something that was completely against the basics of Christianity or Catholicism or God himself, that there would be an event in which before he could make statements, whatever the case may be, that God would just strike him down. Yeah. Like full-heartedly.
Yeah. Or maybe that wouldn't be necessary. Maybe he's getting ready to go do the speech and freaking there's a lightning storm and the electrical system goes out and he can't make the speech, so it has to be canceled.
I got you.
It might be something like that. But if he was like bound and determined, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this happen, he'd have a heart. I think God would take him.
Did nothing like that ever happen historically with popes? Like where they did or said something that was completely outrageous or completely against God, and
lots of popes have done things. Interestingly enough, not a single one has ever tried to say this is justified under Catholic doctrine.
Can you give us an example of what something like this would be?
The Borgia popes.
No.
They're a perfect example of that.
An example of what a pope could say or be going to say that would kind of cause this reaction.
Killing your children is acceptable.
To include abortion.
Yes.
So there's obviously, at least in that statement, there's ambiguity because you could say children, post-birth, baby, or fetus or whatnot, pre-birth, right? Like, well, that's
the thing. There actually is no distinction in Catholic doctrine. Mm-hmm. It's a human life. The only acceptable circumstance where one human can destroy another is the other human poses an imminent threat to your life. So you are defending your life from imminent threat.
Is there other... I've always kind of got the impression that abortion is something that Catholics are very vocal about. Like, not vocal in the outspoken way, but if you ask them, is it okay? In most cases, they will say no, and they don't really have a lot of exceptions.
Yeah. Is
there another topic within the Catholic religion that people universally believe that they would feel so passionate about if say society started violating that particular belief? Because abortion is a very, very sensitive subject.
Yes.
But it's also like almost immediately controversial. As soon as you say the word, people expect controversy.
Yeah, it's a major political debate.
Is there another topic that's that hot within the Catholic religion, just America or whatever culture just doesn't happen to hit on it?
Women can't be priests. That's another big one.
Within the church itself?
Correct.
Like within, is this even within your family? Or is your family kind of within
This is a universal Catholic doctrine.
But the debate about it.
So most other churches, like Baptist churches, Protestant churches, the Anglican Church in England, will have women ordained as priests. There's no such thing as a woman Catholic priest.
Why is that?
Because priests all have apostolic succession, meaning every priest can trace his lineage from the person who ordained him to the person who ordained him to the person who ordained him back to one of the 12 apostles.
But couldn't if a priest today ordained a female, couldn't she trace her lineage all the way back to? Because you're not talking about biological lineage.
Well, part of that requirement is all the apostles were men. Jesus specifically selected 12 men.
But so how does Mary fit into that? I know that she wasn't one of the 12 men.
Yes,
but she was obviously very close to Jesus.
Yes.
Could it not be? And obviously, it's too late to trace it back to Mary per se.
She was not a priest.
What was her role? I've never really understood her role because the Catholics seem very attracted
to Mary. Which
Mary
are you talking about? Because there's a couple of Marys in the Bible.
Primarily the one that I see on candles a lot.
That would be the Virgin Mary.
There you go.
That's the mother of Jesus.
Okay. So I'm not talking about I'm talking about the one that followed Jesus. So
Mary Magdalene.
Sure.
Yeah, she's not the one on the candles. She's not the one that we would venerate.
Okay, I got those two confused as far as who was on the candle. But the one that, in regards to the apostle, or in regards to the 12 apostles, I know that she wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
But she was very close to Jesus. And it's too late to go back now and say, well, if she were to to bestow her, if she were a priest, she could bestow her priesthood upon a lady of her time. Yeah. And then you would have the same thing on the male side. But why couldn't a male today just say, "You're preaching the word. You're doing the things that that the church wants. Why couldn't she do it?"
Because the apostles were specifically given the authority to do that, and she was not.
Yeah, but the apostles are gone, and now their lineage, who still have the same authority.
Yes.
Couldn't they say
no?
Why?
That authority was not granted to them. We do not know or understand why. We can guess and speculate.
Yeah,
but Jesus specifically gave that authority to the men that followed him, not to the women.
Why are Catholics, from my perspective, really, really interested in? Why is there so many pictures of a Mary? I can't necessarily always know which one, but why is Mary such a big deal? Because like if you go to a Baptist church, it's Jesus, cross, Jesus. You won't see a picture of Mary most of the time. I've never been inside of a Catholic church.
Yeah.
But
seeing pictures of Mary in Catholic church is very common.
Yeah, but it seems like anytime I run into a place that's predominantly Catholic for whatever reason, there's lots of pictures of Mary. Yes. And not as many. I mean, there are obviously going to be pictures of Jesus, but
yes, yeah, there
are like 80% Mary.
Many pictures of Mary. Yeah.
Why are Catholics interested in Mary?
Because she is much closer to us than he is. She is fully human. He is both human and God. Mm. She is fully human, and to put it simply, she has his ear. There's a very specific incident in the Gospels where she wanted something done, and his exact reply to her was, "Woman, what would you have me do? My time has not yet come."
So even Jesus started his reply with woman.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is exactly how he replied, to which she seems to have completely ignored that. And this was at a wedding feast, which brings me into another weird belief that some Catholics have about Catholics shouldn't drink at all. That's weird because at this particular wedding feast that they were attending, they ran out of wine. Like, the booze is all gone. We've run out of booze at this wedding. And so Mary goes to Jesus. The disciples and some of the servants that knew them came to her and told her we have this problem, we're trying to figure out what to do and we don't know what to do. So she goes to him and says, "Hey, they're out of wine." And he says, "What do you want me to do about it? It's not my time to start working miracles and doing things."
He said, "I'm off the clock."
Basically. And she seems to have completely ignored that and gone to the servants and says, "Hey, do whatever he tells you." And then he went along with it and freaking told them, take all these stone jars that you have here and go fill them with water.
He's probably like, "Oh, fuck."
We don't know if he said anything of that nature because that's not recorded. But he told the servants to fill up the stone jars with water and then draw some of the water out and take it to the head waiter. And the servants are like, "Oh, okay, I don't get it, whatever." And so they filled up all these jars with water, drew some out and took it to the head waiter. And when the head waiter took it, it was wine. And he tasted it and was amazed by what excellent wine it was. And actually went to the groom and complimented the groom for having saved the best wine for last. And at that point, all the water in the stone jars had become wine. So in other words, not only is it acceptable to drink, but Jesus brought the good booze.
Well, he didn't
just bring average booze. He brought the good booze.
And he didn't pay tax on it either. So technically, Jesus is a moonshiner. Technically.
We can discuss that. You are supposed to pay just taxes. So we can argue what taxes are just. And I will argue there are a great many taxes today that are not just.
In the eyes of the IRS, Jesus was a bootlegger. A moonshiner.
If he had been living in the United States, well, no, he didn't sell it. He did not sell it. He received no profit.
Yeah, but you can't make liquor, regardless if you sell it or not. You can't distill liquor over a certain quantity. So if he was at a wedding feast, presumably there was enough people there.
Depends on what the quantity is per person and all that. But but anyway, Jesus brought the booze. So drinking is perfectly acceptable. It's being drunk that's sinful. So there's a distinction there that a lot of people miss.
So
the whole point of that, to bring it back to the subject of Mary, when she wanted him to do something, he did it. He honored his mother and respected her wishes. So we can ask for her intercession with him, and she will often help us if we come to her in a spirit of humility and repentance and such.
So
she will help us.
Do you pray to Mary at some point? Not you specifically, but is it like a Catholic thing where you actually pray to Mary instead of to God or to Jesus?
No, we pray for her to intercede.
Okay.
So it's a kind of another kind of fine distinction that a lot of people miss. We will pray to her and we will pray to saints. We do not worship them.
Yeah.
Worship is reserved for God. So there's a distinction.
And I'm guessing that when you like from a ritual perspective, if you have a statement or a saying or a proverb that you might go over, some are not like you wouldn't say the same thing to God or to Jesus per se as you would to Mary.
Yeah.
Through in your ritual purposes or maybe in your prayers, or it's treated differently.
Yes.
Okay. So you grow up, you hit all this not anti-Catholic, but all this. Yeah. What is wrong with you? Why won't you do these things? And I remember many things that you wouldn't do for many years, and some of them you still don't do.
Yeah.
Facebook, you wouldn't do Facebook for many years.
Yeah, that's not because I think it's sinful. It's just because I kind of hate it. Yeah, and I still kind of hate it to this day.
You were just in a different classification.
Yeah.
In
I also hated having pictures of me taken. I've mellowed out a lot on that respect.
Pictures, but I remember you, and to this day, you just did it a little while ago. You pray before every meal, kind of regardless of where you're at. Yeah. That's been consistent.
Yep.
I've never not seen you. I don't know if it depends on the size of the meal or if you're eating a certain type of thing, but it seems like
it's before a meal. That's the distinction in my mind. Is I pray before meals. If it's just a snack, there's not really any need for it. But if I'm going to sit down and eat a meal, I'm going to say a quick prayer to ask God to bless the food.
So with all the consistencies that I saw you maintain, and this is now for me and you going on 20 years, but you've obviously got life before me. Yeah. So that's another 30 years.
17 years.
Yeah, so you're total 35, 38 years.
37, yeah.
So you've got a long time of maintaining these beliefs.
Yeah.
Did you feel like when you came out of the Marine Corps or at a certain point in the Marine Corps that you were not the same person as you were before, even if you believed the same things, that the outlook had changed?
No, my outlook hasn't really changed at all.
What would you say changed the most about you in the Marine Corps? Because the Marine Corps, from my perspective, was your first outing into the regular per se world, because your family, again, from my perspective, was very reserved, very inside the house, not a lot of external exposure, not a lot of media. Yeah. Kind of just like mom, pop, and that's the end of the road. That's the authority. Everybody else is just out there somewhere. Yeah. So what do you think changed the most about you after the Marine Corps, after your exposure to the Marine Corps?
I've definitely become a lot more skeptical of authority. Now that I recognize how incompetent a lot of authority is. And people that you think would be these guys, they're up in these high powered, incredibly important positions. They must really know some things. They must be aware of all kinds of crazy business, and they must be just incredible wizards of management and understanding and all this kind of stuff. And you start to realize a lot of times they're not. They're just regular people. And sometimes they're absolute buffoons and morons who have just been able to put on a good show and convince people that they're smart when they're really idiots. And sometimes they are really smart. Sometimes they're really, really smart. And like, we have a chessboard here sitting in front of us. They might be the best chess player in the world. And they don't know jack about woodworking. Yeah. They don't know their ass from their elbow when it comes to changing a tire on a car. When it comes to practical applications of things, they don't know a damn thing. And yet they're incredibly high level management and giving orders that are causing dramatic changes in things. And so I started to see a lot of that. And then there's the my famous bureaucracy thing that I noticed when I was going to school in Roxborough. I thought this was a feature of Los Angeles, where the government agencies are just using money just because they can. I saw it a little bit in the Marine Corps when working in the training shop in Mass 2, where you had a budget. You have to spend that budget, because if you don't, you may not get that whole budget next year, and you might need it next year. So you better spend the whole thing. Yeah, I remember hearing that too. Yeah, and it's like, we don't need this. We've got, however many thousands of dollars for office supplies and chairs and desks and everything. We don't need new desks and chairs. Like, we do need some more fuel for the trucks, so we can, and we need money for range time so we can go out and do more training. Why don't we just spend all this money that we don't need for furniture on training time? Problem solved. And got told that was just a ridiculous idea, that they would never allow us to do that. That's not possible. You can't do that. Don't worry about that, Sergeant Doyle. The officers are figuring this stuff out. You don't understand. And what I didn't understand at the time is that higher up, and I'm using air quotes as I say that for anyone who can't see, has made a decision. And people who make decisions do not like to have their decisions questioned by the people who are supposed to be carrying out their decisions. So there's a very strong tendency to just do what you're told because it makes everybody's life easier, especially when there's large amounts of money being thrown around, and especially when you're responsible for just spending the money. And it's not your money. Exactly. It's not your money, so you just blow it and you just use it. One thing, the funny part is the Marine Corps, I learned, pisses away millions of dollars every month. Every single month. Pisses away tens of millions of dollars every month. But if you compare the Marine Corps to any other branch of the service, the Marine Corps comes out of that looking like wizards of thriftiness and savings. Yeah. And the whole military as a whole, if you compare the military to any other branch of the federal government, the military comes out of that comparison looking like masters of financial management. And it's really, really terrible. The Marine Corps pisses away tens of millions. The rest of the U.S. military pisses away hundreds of millions, if not billions. The rest of the federal government pisses away hundreds of billions. I mean, I see a little bit of that even at like the school
like our school level.
Yeah.
Like the amount of administrators and how much they get paid. I mean, one of them, a superintendent just resigned because he was acting in bad faith and did some sketchy things. And there's no criminal charges, but it's like, yeah, okay, I'll bow out, type of thing, at least to my knowledge. Yeah. But he got like a $250,000 severance package for a local school district. It's not like we live in a big city.
Yep.
This is the local rinky-dink school system.
Oh, that reminds me of the thing that I saw. This was in Roxborough. If you ever watch like city municipal workers working on a street, and especially if you drive past them daily over an extended period, like a month or so, and you watch them doing some street work, and if you drive past them every day, you'll see it, especially if you go by there multiple times a day. And when I was going to school in Roxborough, there was one particular corner that I had to go around every single day, and they were doing work there. So I saw this happen. And I had seen it in Los Angeles, and I thought it was a feature of Los Angeles, and discovered that, no, it's a feature of all municipalities everywhere. Watch what they do as they're paving that street. You will see them rip up the old street, the old asphalt, the old concrete, and then they'll lay down fresh concrete, new concrete. They'll repave the whole thing. And they rip up the new pavement, and they start laying in like conduit and piping and stuff like that. And then they repave over that. Then they rip up all that pavement, and then they start laying in a sidewalk.
So you're saying they lay the same pavement 3 times, a minimum?
Yes.
You saw this?
Yes.
That's crazy.
I watched them do it. And this is, like I said, that's the norm in Los Angeles. That happens all the time in Los Angeles. And I thought it was just the corruption of Los Angeles. And then I saw them do it in Roxborough, North Carolina.
Why do you think that is? Like why? Like how did we come to this point? Why do you think they're doing that?
It is a natural feature of bureaucracy that if you're getting paid to do a job and then when you're done, you're not going to get paid anymore, would you want that job to end?
What if we just paid them a flat amount?
What do you mean?
Like you have a month to do this job and the salary is, or the pay is $1 million to complete the project.
All right. And now they've spent $1 million and they've took their month and the project is 90% done.
Okay.
Then what?
I mean, I would imagine that in like a common sense world, either there'd be a discussion or there'd be some employee changes.
So somebody would get fired, in other words.
I mean, I presume, like, I'm not saying that in every situation that's going to be the case, but if this is how you operate, then But
here's the problem. The guy who owns that construction company is the brother-in-law of the city superintendent.
But where do you think it all comes from?
It is a natural function of bureaucracy. All bureaucracies
go one step beyond that. Why do we have the bureaucracy?
Because people believe that you need government to do those kinds of things.
What do you believe in that context? How do roads get built without government?
How did they get built when it wasn't government's responsibility to do it?
Don't know who built roads before government. I'm not sure.
Private citizens would build the roads or pay to have the road built. And when it was general private citizens doing it, they would hold that contractor better make sure that road got built. Because if they didn't, the private citizens would take them to court.
How did Rome build roads? Was it the Rome government or Rome citizenry?
That was the Roman government. That was the Roman army, specifically.
They did a pretty good job.
Yeah, they built some really nice roads.
Well, not even nice, just they lasted a long time, and there was a lot of them.
Yeah. Funny story about the Roman bureaucracy. This is something else I learned freaking reading encyclopedias and stuff. And actually, this one, my real epiphany happened through Wikipedia. I saw a map on Wikipedia. You've heard how, the Roman Empire conquered the world, right? Well, that's actually not true. The Roman Empire didn't really conquer anything. The Roman Republic conquered the world. And I realized this when I saw a map of the expansion of Rome. And it starts out as this little city-state in the middle of Italy, and then it jumps and expands, and it's controlling the whole middle section of Italy. And then it's controlling the whole southern boot of Italy, and then it takes over Sicily. Then it takes over the northern half, and it's continuously expanding until all of a sudden it controls all of the Mediterranean world, the whole thing. And then huge parts of Central Europe too, and all of North Africa, and just gobbling up everything around it. And then it changes into the Roman Empire and stops. There's literally almost no expansion. There's like 2 little provinces in the 400 years of the Roman Empire. They added 2 provinces. And they're very tiny provinces.
All the other expansion was under the Roman Republic.
Yes. and it
why do
just
you draw
stopped.
that distinction?
So this is an important distinction because when the Roman Empire split apart into two, the Eastern and Western halves, this division was done specifically because it was so big and so complex that one emperor couldn't rule it all and couldn't manage it all. But then, overlay that over that map I just mentioned. The Roman Empire didn't expand. It didn't get any bigger. So how could it possibly have been too difficult for one man to manage it when one man had been managing it for 300 years at that point? So what changed? The Roman state itself changed. It got much, much bigger, and over time, continually and progressively ate a larger portion of the output of Roman society.
Do you know? I mean, maybe this falls back into the how many times do you think about
the Roman Empire?
The Roman Empire every day.
Yeah.
I do think about it probably every other day or so.
Yeah,
right? But one thing that stands out to me is that how their currency devalued.
Yes.
At the exact same time. Yeah. If you look at from kind of the first sets of Roman coins to really be issued after Rome became what you might call a superpower.
Yeah.
And then to the end of its lifetime, the amount of precious metal compared to the amount of scrap metal included in the coins continuously is devalued.
Yep.
I've wondered in that context is what would have happened if Rome hadn't devalued its currency. Like I'm not exactly sure how Rome fell. I mean, it's a large event in history that I'm sure has a variety of factors.
Yeah.
But one of the factors arguably was the devaluation of their currency.
Yes,
another factor
certainly played a part.
Yeah,
yes.
Another factor might be the bureaucracy and the weight of that bureaucracy that was created. The split between the Eastern and the Eastern and Western, right?
Eastern and Western, yeah.
Eastern and Western empires.
Yeah,
might have played into it, but all of those things except for currency, depend on leadership and men.
Yes. The currency does too. It's the corruption of the men that's causing that devaluation of the currency.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point is that the currency in it of itself doesn't do anything. The men change the currency or the leadership changes the currency.
Yeah.
But why do they change the currency? And the answer is simply, in my opinion, because they need more of it. Yeah. They need it to be cheaper and easier to produce. Yeah. So if you wonder what happens if they were using a currency that couldn't have been cheaper and easier to produce, that in fact got harder, what would have happened to Rome over the next, say, 1,000 years if their currency had remained like limited?
Yeah.
If there was 100 million gold coins that served as the Roman currency, and for the sake of argument, say those gold coins couldn't be divided or counterfeited, then what would have happened? Right? Like if you compare it to Bitcoin, you end up in a scenario where it's like the money's getting more valuable, the population is getting richer. What happens? We don't know because it didn't.
Yeah, there was nothing like that.
Yeah, we've never seen that,
at least as far as we know. Yeah.
But do you think that in today's modern society that we're comparable to Rome in the United States? Like we're following a similar course?
There's definitely a lot of parallels. Yeah.
Do you think that currency is one of those parallels?
Yes. Yes.
What other parallels do you think exist between us and Rome?
A lack of willingness to stand up for your state.
Why do you need to stand up for your state?
Because there are always barbarians out in the wilderness waiting for the opportunity to sack your city. In the days of Rome, that was literal. There were literal barbarian tribes living outside the Roman Empire, and these were basically just wild people who were not civilized. And I mean that in the traditional sense. They had no permanent cities. They did not have their own written languages. They often had oral traditions and such, but they didn't have a written language. So when I say barbarians, I'm using it in the literal sense.
Couldn't you also call them just free peoples?
Yeah, you could.
So Rome conquered free peoples, at least in some cases.
In some cases, yeah. There was a number of civilizations that they conquered and destroyed.
Sure, yeah.
Carthage being the most obvious.
I wonder the same about the United States. Yeah. Are we like, I understand that within our borders and our structure, our legal system, that we have a certain level of freedom.
Yes.
That in other places, under certain circumstances, doesn't exist, and vice versa is true. Like I can only go 70 miles an hour on the interstate, generally speaking. And in Germany, on the autobahn, you can go as fast as you want. So there are freedoms that we don't have, right?
Yes. But all speed limits should be abolished, by the way.
But the idea that we aren't the other barbarians is what bothers me.
Well, what I mean by that is there's a specific problem with it, because anything taken to its extreme is poisonous. Freedom is the same way. If you take freedom to its logical conclusion, you have anarchy. And the result of that is these barbarian tribes get to do whatever the hell they want. And typically what they want is to plunder, rape, and murder. And that's exactly what they did when they marched into the Roman Empire. They basically tore it all down and burned it.
Let's say that you're a Roman soldier. Are you not plundering, raping, and murdering? In that you're in the same time period where pretty much everybody who got conquered, depending on or not, I mean, unrelated to who conquered you, for the most part, you were going to be raped, plundered, and murdered.
Not true.
Who didn't rape, plunder, and murder at least?
Well, no. It depended on how the conquering went, and what level of resistance you put up. Did you fight? Was there a big war, or were you just absorbed into the empire? For example, Egypt. Egypt was basically just absorbed into the empire. It was never conquered per se. There were several wars fought there, but just because of the nature of those wars, Egypt itself was never really plundered and conquered in that way.
Well, let's come back to you.
No.
You're sure of a lot of things.
No.
Can you give us a list of a few things you are undoubtedly, go to your grave, no evidence can change you, things that are true, things that you believe?
Christ is king.
Okay. We got that one.
An armed population is a safer population.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in the sense of individually they're safer from any bad thing happening to an individual person. I mean, if the population in general is armed, there's a lesser chance, there's still a chance, but a lesser chance of invasion, of government tyranny, of a specific individual person being attacked. There's a very high likelihood that you are armed. Criminals and human predators are much less likely to try and attack you if you're very likely to be armed.
So Christ is king.
Yep.
Guns are good.
Yes. All income and property taxes are theft.
The last guest that I had on was the Alamance County. He's a candidate for the Alamance County Board of Commissioners.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Very nice guy.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking with him, both on the podcast and a little bit before and after. He's generally pro-freedom.
Yeah, good.
His name's, what was his name? Ed? Huh? Ed Priola. Ed Priola. I couldn't remember his last name. He would disagree with you because the first statement he made was he was talking about how schools are becoming socialist.
Yes.
And I said, what kind of socialist? Are you talking about socialist like you need to pay for roads, have a fire department and military, or like everything needs to be paid for by the government and taxed? Yeah. And he was like, well, I think any reasonable person would say that kind of building roads and maintaining a military and certain level of taxation is okay. But
I would disagree with that. I would say that a certain level of taxation is necessary. I would still classify it as evil. It is a necessary evil, and as such, should always be restricted to the greatest extent possible.
So taxes,
as opposed to expanding it to the greatest extent possible, which is exactly what we're doing now.
Christ is king.
Yeah.
Taxes are bad.
Yes.
Or guns are good. Taxes are bad.
Yes.
That's 3. Yeah. Do you have any others that you can't be wavered?
Nuclear power is dramatically underutilized and could solve a whole lot of the problems that we have.
Okay. Abortion.
Yeah, bad.
Any exception?
Well, it's always bad. In the case of the mother's life is in danger, then she has the right to make the call. That's very terrible. That's not just bad. That's very terrible. I would never wish that on anyone. But if she finds herself in that situation, she has the right to make the call. Anything other than that is you're killing a human.
Now, we can go down a long road with every single one of those topics.
Yes.
But what I wanted to just lay out was what your fundamental beliefs are, the things that you really can't be wavered on. Yeah. Right? Like it's going to be pretty hard to waver me on, I would come back to a previous joke, waver me on gravity. I don't necessarily know how it works, but I know that shit's real. Right? Like,
that's not what you were arguing that night.
that was 151 arguing that night.
Yeah. Oh, here's another one. The U.S. Constitution is the greatest political document ever written.
Would you not compare or maybe say that the Magna Carta was slightly better since it was first?
No. In the same way that I would not say that a Model T is better than a modern Toyota Camry.
But you wouldn't have a Camry without a Model T.
Correct.
You wouldn't have James Bond. Or you
it's
wouldn't
a
have
precursor. It's not better. It has been expanded and improved upon. The Magna Carta specifically guaranteed the rights of the nobleman against the king. The U.S. Constitution expanded that concept to include all people.
Well, actually,
or specifically all citizens.
I shouldn't say it was the first because it wasn't. At least I know of one other kind of explanation of rights, and that was I'm gonna fuck this up. It was a Persian, one of the early pre-biblical or maybe biblical Persian kings. Yeah. He had basically a Bill of Rights written on not even on papyrus. It was written on clay tablets in I can't remember the name of the language.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Cyrus.
It's Cyrus.
Cyrus the Great, I think.
I think I know who you're talking about. That's a similar thing, but it's similarly limited. And actually, if you look up like the Roman Constitution that the Roman Republic operated under, that's also similar to that. But that also restricts its rights for the citizens.
But the original Constitution didn't also restricted some people, right? Because it didn't include everybody didn't have the same rights at the beginning of the Constitution.
Yes, they did. Well,
black people had the same rights at the beginning of the Constitution?
Funny story. The Constitution itself doesn't distinguish black people from white people. Race is not mentioned, not one single time in the Constitution.
Sex is.
Where?
All men are created equal.
In that is universally agreed to have referenced mankind.
But does it reference women specifically? Because it references men specifically.
That's the thing. It doesn't distinguish between men and women. It's saying man in the sense of mankind.
Like one giant step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
Yes,
yeah. I get the point. What I'm saying is
that
like
those distinctions were all added later. For example, the whole distinction people make about slavery and that slavery was allowed on the Constitution. That's not true. That's blatantly false. There's nothing in the Constitution that would permit or allow slavery, and the basic lists of rights and such in there would explicitly prohibit slavery. So allowing slavery was a very obvious deal with the devil. It was a compromise. It was always contradictory to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Everyone knew that. It was a Faustian bargain that they made to try and beat the British.
A Faustian.
This was Abraham Lincoln's point. If you ever read I think it was Lincoln Douglas debates, where he's debating the guy that was running against him for president. This is right before the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln's entire point is this institution is completely incompatible with this document being the Constitution. That there's no possible way you can justify this institution under this document. You cannot reconcile those two. That was his entire point. And nobody could argue that. At the time, the actual slave owners could not argue that point. And they didn't try. The minute he got elected, they started shooting.
So let's summarize, unless you got another one. So we've got Christ is King.
Yeah.
We've got guns are good.
Yeah.
Taxes are bad.
Yeah.
The Constitution.
Yeah. Constitution is good.
I'm missing one. I feel like I'm missing one. Maybe that's it. But does that kind of summarize your foundation?
For the most part, yeah. I'm sure there's other things that we could go over, but that's what I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing. Okay. Bitcoin. That's the only thing I'm sure of. Yeah. Like because it's math. Yeah. It's physics. Yeah. Right. I don't have to necessarily know how every piece of the math works or understand how physics works at like an atomic level.
Yeah. But as yet, the people who do understand those things can't break it.
Yes. And even Elon came out recently, and I don't know how recent it was, say the past year, and they were asking him about AI, and he was like, even AI can't fundamentally break the laws of physics. No. Like unless it discovers a new realm of physics that we don't understand that circumvents our current understanding. Yeah. There's the laws of mathematics, the laws of physics will maintain. Yeah. Now it might become extremely good at math to a level we've never seen before. Yeah. And be much faster than current computers. But once it can do it and we understand how it does it, presumably we will have some insight into that. Yeah. We can mimic that because it's just math. All we have to do is know how you put it together, how you answer the question or you solve the equation. Yeah. So Bitcoin's the only thing that I'm 100% sold on. Yeah. Like I don't know, I'm not going to compare it to your religious belief. No. But for me, it almost is. Yeah. It is the bedrock in which I'm building every bit of who I am. Yeah. And my business and my life, my philosophies have almost all changed because of Bitcoin. Yep. running into Bitcoin was almost like running into you at 19. Like all of a sudden I was confronted by this like unmovable object that I couldn't logic my way out of that seemed to be ahead of me.
Yeah.
Now, obviously we're flawed humans,
Yes.
but Bitcoin isn't. I mean, sure, it might be flawed in certain ways. I mean, there's probably plenty of ways to argue that, but fundamentally it is, to me, the answer to many, many questions.
Yeah.
What have you not figured out? What is unanswered for you? What is the things that you struggle to reconcile?
In what respect? What do you mean?
Any context. Same as kind of the previous question. We've established who you are.
Yeah.
Now I want to establish who you're not necessarily who you're becoming, but how you're progressing, where you're questioning things. What isn't as clear to you as, say, your belief system or your beliefs in your religion or in your
I suppose to an extent Bitcoin would fall into that category. I'm very optimistic about it. I do think it has tremendous potential. I'm clearly not as convinced about it as you are.
Yeah.
I would like to see it succeed, because it offers a potential alternative to the Federal Reserve System, which there's another one that I'm very certain about. The Federal Reserve System is extremely evil.
I would argue that the Federal Reserve System is responsible for more deaths than almost anything else in history, to include Hitler, or to include World War II in general, not just Hitler.
I would disagree with that.
Think about this. Yeah. Why is it that a lot of the foods that we eat as Americans are actually, like, a lot of the ingredients are outlawed almost everywhere else?
Yeah.
Because it's the most profitable.
Yes.
There's no other motivation for it.
Yes.
Unless every person who owns every major company is a psychopath and just wants to kill everybody.
Don't misunderstand me. I'm not arguing that the Federal Reserve is not evil. I'm just arguing death tolls. On the level of threats, I would argue the Federal Reserve is maybe 2 or 3. But not
they're not a in-your-face threat. Most of the time you don't even know they killed you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? The idea,
I agree with that, but there haven't been enough deaths that could be laid at their feet to compare with something like socialism.
The American
and I would also argue a lot of the evil the Federal Reserve does is being perpetrated through socialist systems.
Most definitely. But if you look at the degradation of the American society from 1971 until now, everything has gotten worse.
Yes.
And everything's going to continue to get worse because the dollar is going to continue to be devalued.
Yes.
As that progresses, every person that dies that ate shit tons of fast food, that drank ass loads of soda, that was all done under a Federal Reserve System.
Yes.
There's nobody really, there's plenty of people left alive that were alive prior to 1971.
Yes.
But if you look at 1971 until presumably the Federal Reserve ends at some point, that window between there, effectively every American has been touched by it.
Yes.
With their healthcare system, their working lives, the amount of stress, everything. It's all at the feet of the Federal Reserve. Because if you continuously trace it, you get back to money. If you trace the money, you just go right back to the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
Who's pulling these triggers?
Yeah. Yeah, the Federal Reserve is behind almost all of it. But I would still debate the level of evil. Mostly because all of those people are not killed by it. A great many of them are injured by it. But a relatively small percentage of them are outright killed by it.
It'd be like Hitler, the Nazis killed you in your face. Right?
Yes.
They scooped you up, they put you on a train, they took you to a camp, and they walked you into a place that was going to gas you to death.
Yes.
Or they shot you.
Yes.
It was quick.
Yes.
You understood.
Yes.
At least to some degree. You understood that these people are not my fucking friends.
Yes.
The Federal Reserve is not marching you to a gas chamber.
Yeah.
It's just accelerating the amount of time you must slave to them.
Yes. Yes. And that's part of why I would argue the degrees of evil. The Federal Reserve wants to make slaves of everybody. They're not actually out to exterminate everyone.
Yeah, they can't exterminate them.
Yeah, they
necessarily.
don't. Yeah, the Federal Reserve doesn't want everyone dead. And that is the distinction there. The greater evil is the one that wants everyone dead.
So I land on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? We could talk about that all day.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have too much more time. I have to head out here pretty soon.
Yeah, so we can talk about that all day. Yeah. But so you're pro-Bitcoin, you're pro-gun.
Yes.
You're pro-Catholic. What are you anti? I know that you're anti-government and such like that, but let's get a little more nuanced.
Anti-communist. I'm anti-feminist. Anti-democrat.
Are you anti-Republican?
Not specifically, no. There are a lot of corrupt Republicans, but the party itself doesn't have a completely evil platform. Now, you can argue that platform may be just a complete smokescreen, but the party's official position is not explicitly, overtly evil, as opposed to the Democratic Party, which is absolutely 100% explicitly, overtly evil.
Do you think the average Democrat is evil?
Probably not, but a lot of them are insane. We were discussing this earlier. The people that
question.
the people that would get that question wrong are very frequently Democrats.
Can we get a recap of that question?
The bear question is: you ask an individual, if you were out in the woods and you're maybe lost or something. You're lost in the woods. You're not 100% sure where you are or how to get out, and you have two options for two random encounters. One of them, you randomly encounter an adult male, human, so a man. Randomly selected man. You know nothing about this person. You've never seen them before. You don't know their race, their ethnicity, their background, their culture. You know nothing about them, nothing at all. But this is a person from the United States. You're in the United States. Second encounter, a bear, an adult bear. Which one do you pick? And there is a depressingly high number of people who nowadays will pick the bear. They do this, they say, because men make them feel uncomfortable. They're scared of men. They've had bad experiences with men. Some of them have been attacked and victimized by men. And they say that the people asking this question just don't understand their feelings, and they don't understand that they're trying to make a statement with this answer about how unsafe they feel around men and how bad men are behaving nowadays. And the problem that these people have that they don't understand is the people asking the question are fully aware of that. We understand completely why you're making the choice you're making. And the people who are answering bear don't understand that the people asking the question are making the point that you don't understand the situation. You're making a decision based on how you feel about the situation. But the situation has an imminent threat, a genuine danger to your life. And in any survival situation, there is a right and wrong answer. The wrong answer is the one where you're more likely to die. The right answer is the one where you're more likely to live. And anytime when you have those two options, the answer should be so clear as to be utterly unmistakable as to which is right and which is wrong. You should instantly know, just at a glance, exactly which way to go in order to live and not die. And the problem is there's a huge number of people in America today who don't know that. They don't understand that. They don't even notice it or recognize it. And they'll say things like, oh, well, I wouldn't mind being killed by a bear. And obviously a person who says something like that has no concept or comprehension of what that statement means. You have no concept of death or pain if you think you'd be okay being eaten by a bear. And that's why men nowadays, because it's most often women who say that about the bear. That's why men are saying things nowadays like women are crazy, because women will say things like that. Like they would rather be stuck in the woods with a wild bear than a random man.
Why? Like what is the point of this question? Like what are you hoping to? I understand that there's a level of A, entertainment, and B, exposing a level of ignorance per se.
Yes.
But where? So a person answers this question, they get the answer incorrect. Where do you go from there in that conversation with the person?
So it is demonstrating that no rational conversation is possible with that person. It's demonstrating it in real time. This person cannot comprehend of a deadly threat right there in front of them. Their feelings of discomfort of being alone with a random man is greater than their desire to live.
Is that something that you think that they did? Like they came to this conclusion on their own, or is there something pushing them in this direction?
I think there's a great deal pushing them in this direction. There's a whole lot of propaganda nowadays. I mentioned a minute ago that I'm anti-feminist. Most feminists, if you actually read feminist literature, are extremely misandrist. Misandrist is the hatred or contempt of men. They're very vehemently, openly hateful of men. They consider all men to be a threat. They consider all men to be predators, which is absolutely insane. If you actually look at the stats, it's approximately 2% of people, and this is all people, men and women both, are true psychopaths, genuine human predators.
Well, you don't even have to look that far. You can just walk into a grocery store.
Yes.
And be like, okay, I see a couple.
Yeah.
They're
perfectly fine.
They seem normal.
Yeah.
Okay. You can look at 1,000 couples, and 998 of them are going to be. I mean, they might have marital problems or what have you. You might argue, but neither one of them are actively trying to hurt, or kill or injure.
Yes, yeah, and this is part of the problem here is most people encounter random men tens of thousands of times in any given month, and you don't even notice it because nothing happens. You don't encounter bears very frequently because they have a tendency to see humans as food. And every bear that's ever killed and eaten a human men mostly will go out, hunt that bear down and kill it. We've killed all the man-eating bears, so there ain't that many of them around anymore. That's why you're not likely to encounter a man-eating bear, because we've killed them all. And we used to do that for humans too. But I mentioned a little while ago, I'm anti-democrat. If you look up modern democratic policies for any major city in the country, it doesn't matter which one, pick one, and just start looking up the local court cases, and look up the rap sheets of the people who are being charged with various crimes. Pick a crime. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You can pick felonious assault. You can pick rape. You can pick murder. And just look up the rap sheets of the people who are being charged with these crimes. You'll find they've all been charged before. All of them. And most of them were just let out by Democrats. And this is a constant thing that's happening everywhere in the country. And this is a conscious choice that people have made to be soft on crime, including violent crimes, which, surprise, surprise, if you let violent criminals out into the streets, you get more crime. Who knew? But it's a very obvious thing where people are making a bad decision. You could argue with good intentions, but the decision is bad. Bad from a sense of, if you do one thing, more people get hurt. You do the other thing, less people get hurt. They are choosing more people get hurt because that choice feels good in the moment. In the same way of the bear, you're choosing the wrong thing because that feels okay, as opposed to what is the actual threat here. And nobody is looking at the situation and assessing the threat. And as a result, you run into the threat more. You're more likely to become a victim that way.
I feel like when I met you, that I was very ignorant of the world. Yeah. You influenced my beliefs heavily. Yeah. I remember early in my, probably midway through my high school period, my stepdad, a gentleman named Bill, it was around, I think it was George Bush's first election, I believe. And he said, I got my timing wrong because I had to be 18 because it was about me voting. Or I was going to be 18 when the vote occurred. Yeah. And he said, are you voting? And I said, I don't even know who to vote for. I couldn't tell you if I'm a Republican or a Democrat. I have no idea. Yeah. And he said, do you like guns? And I said, yes. And he said, do you want people all up in your shit? I said, no. He said, then you're a Republican. Vote Republican. Yeah. But when I met you was when I really started to develop some type of political sense. Yep. And it wasn't that you were telling me things that I didn't maybe kind of know. Yeah. Just as a common sense thing. Yeah. But you were putting it into new questions and new scenarios that I'd never considered that really drill down to a lot more of the core. Yeah. Have you ever felt like you've met somebody on the opposite side of the aisle, on the Democrat side of the aisle, that introduced arguments that really changed or pushed you around at all, or that you didn't know how to work with? Because what I'd like to find out is the way I met you I was never going to shake your arguments, right? They were too, and we did argue, but I never really had any good footing on the religious and political side.
You did make me see reason on the one point, freaking weed.
Yeah, weed. Yeah,
but which is the government should get out of it.
Yeah, it's like it's a
government
plant.
should butt out. Yeah,
but what I'd like to see is if you feel like maybe either you've ran into somebody like this before and we can reach out to them, or if we could find somebody that has got a similar background to you, but the opposite. Maybe they were raised Democrat in a family of Democrats, and they have certain ideals, but they're well versed. They're well versed on history. They're well versed on. Have you run into somebody like that?
So this may sound a little bit arrogant, but no. And when I encounter Democrats, especially diehard Democrats, what I find most often is that they engage in doublethink routinely. Doublethink being the ability to hold two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time and simultaneously believe both of them.
Well, what we should do, I've learned a lot from you.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot from other people, and I've learned a lot from arguing with other people and listening to you argue with other people, honestly, because I've heard you argue with a lot of people.
Yeah.
We should find somebody.
You missed one of the best arguments I ever had. I met a Holocaust denier, and that was absolutely fascinating to see his contradictions and his doublethink. And now, to his credit, I pointed out a very obvious fact to him, and it just kind of shut his whole argument down, and it just blew his mind. And that was funny to watch.
We need to find somebody who can argue with you. Not argue. That's not what I'm hoping to have. I'm hoping to have like an intellectual debate where I'm not trying to budge either side. I'm trying to understand both sides. Yeah. Because I've gotten tons of information from you over the past decade. Yeah. But really, I can only think of one person, Austin's brother, Joe, who's really even tried to stand with you over periods of time while maintaining his own beliefs and really not backing down. Like Joe doesn't really seem like he ever goes, okay, Doyle, you got me. Like that's it. Yeah. Like you guys tend to go back and forth. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to find somebody like Joe or Joe himself to come on the podcast with you, and we could have like kind of an initial.
I mean, his brother or Mike's brother?
Austin's brother.
What did I debate with him about?
Oh, it's Mike Barr's brother. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
I'm thinking. Mike Barr's brother. Yeah,
Mike Barr's brother.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't debate with his brother about it.
No, his brother's.
We actually saw pretty eye to eye.
Yeah, his brother's a big Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Pimp Kane.
Yeah, very well. But it would be interesting to get him down here, and we could debate about something.
I'd also like to get you on some of the Bitcoin related podcasts because I think that people that can explain it better than me, and we're going to come across them. People that are that understand more about it. Not even at the Bitcoin level, but understand more about the financial system, and being able to explain some of these more advanced concepts that I'm only vaguely aware of. Yeah, would be a very interesting conversation. So we should find, if you're listening, and you're in our area, Central North Carolina, and you want to come on and have a discussion with Doyle, I promise you, we'll give you a reasonable amount of alcohol and a safe environment to have a discussion, and we can shake hands at the end, right? We might argue and raise hell, but at the end of the day, neither one of us are, we don't wish ill upon anyone.
Yeah. And I will say, a lot of the debates have ended very amicably, like the debates I've had with Joe. Yeah. I reckon they've ended very amicably. And then Red's dad, or stepdad, I believe it's his stepdad, not his actual dad. Do you know the little kid Red that we had working for us?
Yeah, he was working at your shop.
Yeah, yeah. His stepdad is a teacher at I don't remember where he teaches at. He's some kind of an educator and such, and he's fairly liberal, kind of a left leaning guy, but he's not like a hardcore Democrat or communist or anything like that. And we were talking about guns and about government policy and things like that. And we had a big, long debate for like an hour or two. And I think it was almost 2 hours, actually, we debated him. But he seemed perfectly reasonable. And I like to think we kind of changed his mind a little bit on the guns, on why trusting the government to have all the guns is a bad idea.
Well, I think we'll probably have to wrap up here. Yeah. But I'm glad that the community that we're starting to establish is able to meet you. Yeah. Because I've said it a bunch of times, like you've been a valuable portion of my life. And I think everyone should have a Doyle in their lives. Somebody who, no matter what, you can rely on them. Yeah. You know that they are going to help you if you need help. And they're going to tell you the truth. Yeah. Everybody needs somebody like that.
Yeah.
That said, you've been on the podcast.
Yep.
You speak favorably about Bitcoin.
Yep.
We need to cover that more in depth later.
Yes.
But if you're willing to, we'd like to get you to sign our Bitcoin artwork. And like we kind of talked about earlier, the idea behind this is that we've got a canvas that every guest signs. You can sign as big, as small, whatever color. You can draw a picture. You can you can draw an advertisement, whatever you want. And at the end of our first 21 episodes, we're going to take this and try to auction it off. If anybody buys it in Bitcoin, those funds will go to the Bitcoin core developers. If nobody buys it, then I will donate to the Bitcoin core developers and hang it on my wall. But either way, if this podcast is to continue and have any impact on our community or on Bitcoin or on us, this will be where it started. This is the original folk. And to me, I think that's pretty cool. It's kind of part of like a Bitcoin, history and our podcast history. So
very well.
You want to sign it?
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Doyle. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. One last thing I will say, we need to repeal the NFA and Ave Christus Rex.
Before you go,
yes,
take a minute, tell people where they can find you, if they want to debate you, if they want to tell you you're an idiot, or where they can buy your products and kind of the contact information.
So probably the best way to get hold of me is going to be to go through the gun shop. That's Racketback Armory. We're located at 202 East Washington Street in Mebane, North Carolina. Now, I'm not in the shop every day, but if anybody wants to get hold of me, the people in the shop, Sheridan Halfacres, the main guy in there, they'll be able to get hold of me.
What about?
Or you can go through Trey Carson. He knows how to get hold of me too.
What about Twitter?
I do have a Twitter page. I don't really use it for much beyond just liking memes and stuff like that. I don't do a whole lot of social media debating these days, just because it's such a pain to have to post a single reply and then wait for the person to see it, wait for them to reply, and then by the time they get back to you, it may be 2 hours later, and by that time I've already moved on to doing something else.
And your gun store.
Yeah. What
do you guys sell, and what's your website?
So we do primarily gunsmithing. We have a little bit of stuff for sale, but not a whole lot. We also do screen printing and embroidery. So if you need T-shirts or anything like that done up, we can do that right there in the shop for you.
Cerakote?
We do Cerakote for guns. We can do slide cuts on pistols. We can do scope mounting. We can do bluing. We can do traditional stock work. We can do almost anything you like in there. There's one or two things that we're still getting equipment in to do. But yeah, we can do almost anything.
And what's the website that people would go to if they want to check out your stuff?
If you Google Racketback Armory, I believe the very first thing that comes up is our website.
I think it's racketbackarmory.com.
Yes.
Or something like some shortened version of that possibly, but something like that.
Yep.
Cool. Well, let's get this thing signed, and thanks for coming.
Yep, no problem.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Yep, y'all have a good night.